Hey, what's going on YouTube? This is AZ Media here, bringing you guys another video to talk about our second autocross event. This was the first event of the 2023 spring season. The day started out a little bit rough. We had to meet with our friends at 6 a.m. As we were driving there on the freeway, it was already wet, and somehow I think somebody had blown a tire, but their tire had flown up into, my car from another car that I had gotten kicked up. There was no way to avoid it, but it actually knocked my lip loose and it knocked a little bit of the PPF off. Regardless, as soon as we got off the freeway, it started to rain. So we got to the track, had to go through tech, and then luckily I brought a pop-up. We set up the pop-up tent, and since we were running Group B, my friend had a chance to actually swap his tires, so I supervised that. So in this video, I'm going to talk about, what are my thoughts on the car, how it handled, and, really what are my thoughts on the wet versus the dry when it came to the car. It was really interesting to have that difference between wet and dry, and also looking at the different modes in there as well. For the last autocross, we ended up coming in second place. This was due to the performance index, even though we ended up placing a better time in the novice class. But regardless of this, but this time I was thinking we had a little bit of advantage, if the weather actually ended up holding on and if it kept raining, just because we're going to be all-wheel drive and everyone else is probably going to struggle for traction, especially the other rear-wheel drive cars. Well, it just so happened that it rained for pretty much the first group and a little bit of the second group. So the C and D group actually got a little bit of a drier track, so we ended up placing second again, but we were first all the way up until the D class, which we got beat out. What was really good news was I was able to run extra time after that. So, kind of unfortunately, because it's extra time, it doesn't count towards your official time. It's, considered more practice. Or in extra time, we ended up running a 49.771, which made me feel a little bit better about getting beaten by a four-wheel drive car again. So yeah, we were looking at about a 3-second, difference between wet versus kind of dry, and this was also running with different DCS modes, and considering we're running about 4 to 5 sessions kind of per group. My thoughts, at least on the xDrive system, I think BMW did an amazing job with the xDrive system and their logic control especially, and kind of the way that it will differentiate it and actually send power to kind of each wheel depending on the grip that it's actually getting feedback to the computer. When the 5 runs we actually did in the wet, I went from running with DCS on to DCS in the MDM mode and then DCS off. So I ended up finishing my runs and actually had my fastest runs with the engine in Sport mode and not in actual Sport Plus, because when you have it in Sport Plus, the throttle tends to be a little bit more sensitive to where if you're giving it, let's say, 60% throttle, it's going to give you about 100% throttle. So putting it in Sport mode gives you a little bit more of that linear feel, at least when I was on track. So I left it in Sport mode, everything else was in a Sport Plus mode, and then I actually kept DCS and four-wheel drive on, and that actually gave me my fastest times. Now, what was interesting was when the track was a little bit drier, but in the drier times, and actually my fastest time, I ran it with DCS off and DCS in the MDM mode. So both 49 seconds I actually ran in MDM and DCS off. So this difference between the wet and the dry, I think, really comes down to the BMW Control Manager and how it does such a good job of considering how much power to send to each wheel and considering how much grip you really have in these kind of slippery conditions or these wet conditions as well. So what's next in our plans for, the upcoming season and kind of the next few months for me? So, we're going to be signing up for the February Autocross. We're going to be looking at doing that and maybe making the transition to the track in March with NASA. So we may look at doing that event and making our kind of transition onto the track with the car and going from autocross to the track, just because I'll be a little bit more comfortable with it by then. So because of this, I'm thinking about pushing off some of the modifications at least until the summer hits, because that's when the autocross and a lot of the tracking season kind of stops, at least in Arizona, because it gets really hot here. For this reason, I think I kind of want to be able to compare the stock setup to the aftermarket suspension that I'm going to end up going with. One thing I also have to take into mind as well is if I'm going to continue to do autocross or any type of NASA sponsored type event, if I want to do any type of time trials, for example, they have specific rules around modifications that you can do to your cars, how far you can go with those modifications, what classes you'll fall into. So there's a lot of rules around classing and modifications, so I have to do a lot of research around that, just because I don't want to end up wasting money into the wrong parts. To wrap it up, we placed second in our class. I think that was, I was very happy with the results. I was very happy with how the car handled itself. It was a lot of fun, and to be honest with you, that's really what it came down to, is I had fun. So if any of you guys are looking to kind of autocross yourself, feel free to look out there. There's a plenty probably locally. If not, there's probably something at least within driving distance, but there's always something you can kind of do, and this is kind of the safe setting for it. So I want to thank you guys for watching the video, and be sure to like and subscribe. It really helps me out. And then as well, if you can leave any type of comments or questions that you have on the car, or anything you want to see in the future, as well as any type of modifications or what are really the plans going forward, happy to answer those questions for you. But I hope you guys have a great day, and we'll see you in the next one.